morning, everybody. Steve Falcon here. Welcome to the Circle of Brilliance. Today, we continue our discussion about the Likert layer, doing a deep dive through all the different layers of the change grid, just to enhance our abilities to read a profile. But at the same time, we're kind of learning about how the voice of the change grid changes based on where you are plotting. And so Brian was saying before we started the recording that has had a little bit of a period of self-examination around attachment and detachment, specifically regarding how his family, I'm going to say, he seeks but does not heed the advice he gives when it comes to healthcare. So, Brian, why don't you go ahead and kind of review what you were talking about? Kathy's joined us now, so let her know.
Yeah, I always look at things behaviorally, like you like to look what's underneath these assessments. And so I try to figure out what behavior I brought to the event, or what behavior the patient is bringing to an event behind the story. So I said, okay, I need to do the same thing for myself. We always talk about, as I said, David talks about a lot, this idea of managing your own tension, being in the right frame of mind when you're meeting a client. So I said, what happens if I can do the same thing, which I'm sure I can, with my family? And so I went through the whole audit in terms of the narratives behind the attached self, and they're valid. But from my perspective, in terms of results, and I'm a evidence-based guy, it's not working, or else I wouldn't have to say it 100,000 times.
Yep.
So I started to look at, okay, what would the detached self look like? What would that look like to where I could do what I'm trying to do, but not very good at doing, obviously, in terms of like helping them to really turn the lights on in themselves to make that change that is necessary. And that was a very eye-opening experience for me. I haven't gotten to a point where I feel like I'm going to call and apologize to anyone because then they'll take advantage of it.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing that you have to factor in as well is that tension management has to be in play. So
Right,
they
right,
have
right.
enough tension to seek out your guidance, but they don't have enough tension to follow through and do something about it. And so I can certainly say that I share with you the frustration of giving people advice that they then never take. Um, but I have to kind of look at the source of that frustration and their responses and kind of go like, well, the truth be told, they do not find their current situation troublesome enough to bother doing anything definitive to change it. It troubles them enough to bellyache about it, to maybe do a
Mm.
little bit of research, such as it might be. But, the truth is they don't find their current situation troublesome enough to bother doing anything definitive to change it. And so that's a tension management issue. So it might be interesting to see how you might, next time a question arises with one of them, and with as many siblings as you have, it's bound to happen before the weekend is over. Um,
Exactly.
how can you give them the information in such a way that will support, if not enhance, their level of productive tension? So there's a couple of things there we could certainly talk about doing, but let me throw it out to everybody as a question first. So how could you go about, all right, so the scenario is you've got a sibling, you happen to be a physician, you have a sibling who's got some malady, ache, pain, complaint, and they decide to reach out to you. So, and you have a long history of this happening and them not following through. So, how might you modify things? How might you suggest Brian modify his approach to engage a little bit more tension management in the event?
The one thing that comes to mind is that if there's not an initial connection, if there's not an initial kind of show of empathy,
Mhm.
Mm.
that makes that connection, that's, says, hey, I care about you first.
Mhm.
You care enough to talk to me about this. I care enough about you to listen,
Mhm.
and then listen a little bit more. Just, well, that must be troublesome. What's going on? But I think it's that initial connection that, it's so easy over time to lose that awareness, with
Yeah.
certain family members or long-term friends or
Yep. Yep. Yeah, we start to
Yeah.
assume some things.
Right. So it's like a check-in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Got it.
I love what David just said, because I know with family, we have our patterns. They're deep
Mm-hmm.
patterns, and one of the patterns is, oh, here they go again, in your own mind before sometimes they even open their mouths. And it is about, I think, about clearing that consciously before you have the conversation, and think of them as a friend or another person, somebody who's not a member of your family, and be able to bring, as David says, that compassion. I found that in dealing with my husband and other very close friends, my sister and others, is to then, once the compassion is there, and there is actually, you're really giving them a space, a non-judgmental space to talk, then whatever you have to say can come from, they can hear it in your voice. It's a tone of voice that comes through that's different, and a patience that you have. And then the key is to totally detach from the outcome. So that you are not attached to what they do with it, how they react to it, how they feel about it. And what that energetically does is gives them the space to then act in some way, or process it. If not act, then process it and feel safe about coming back.
That's good. It probably would de-stress me as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, and that gets to the point that I wanted to share, is that before you try to manage somebody else's level of tension, it's really important that you manage your own. And because of the history that you have with this, the pushback you get or whatever, as you're trying to help someone who asks for your help, a pattern starts to form where your defenses go up, or your barriers go up right away. Well, if you can move yourself to the center of the change grid, as Kathy was just kind of saying, you need to detach yourself from whatever their outcome is. Or maybe it might even help in the early stages of this for you to go into it with the full expectation that they are not going to do anything with whatever it is you told them. So you don't have to be disappointed or frustrated, because you're just doing what they asked. They asked for data. They asked for some insight or whatever, but beyond that, you've given it to them. What they do is fine. In fact, if your siblings were paying clients, I would say use a phrase that I've used with clients so many times I can't even begin to estimate, but I've often said to them, you pay me for my time, you may waste it any way you want. So that's what it's all about. You pay me for my time, you can waste it any way you want. And then I've at least let them know, it's like, look, ultimately, this is going to come down to you. I'll give you my opinion, my advice, my insights, my whatever. But if you don't take it, that's not about me.
Right, right.
Now,
This is really good. Thank you.
But all that being said, I still think you want to be prepared to give it the old college try when it comes to tension management. And one phrase that I've often incorporated into these kinds of discussions with clients is, under what circumstances will you actually make changes in your behavior, in your choices, in your whatever, your approach to whatever they have to be doing? So under what circumstances will you actually follow through and take the advice, follow through and do those things that intellectually you need to be doing? It's like I could do this all in tension management, but they're empowered at a certain point in time. They're asking good questions. You're giving them good data. All that's about power. But we know that most people, even though they're fully equipped in power to make a good decision, they don't have enough tension to do it. And so it's like at a certain point, you just want to say, there's only so much information that can be shared. There's only so much data that's out there. At a certain, sooner or later, you have to reach a point where you say, enough. I'm going to now stop looking into it, stop talking about it. I'm going to do something about it. So under what circumstances will you actually follow through and do what needs to be done? And because, you're talking about health related stuff, do they really need to wait for a diagnosis that nobody wants to have
Right.
before
And
they
see,
go?
that's the power of that question. Like one sibling, a sister in particular, right? Her whole thing is, I don't do doctors. And so exactly what Kathy described is how I meet the situation. I don't feel good about it, but that's how I honestly meet the situation. Like, okay, here we go again. She don't do doctors. So she's been limping around, finally got her to go to the doctor. She's obese as it is. And when the doctor showed me her x-ray, I said, oh my God. I don't know how long she's been limping around that way, but she literally has no cartilage. And by none, I mean none. It's like driving on rims right now.
Right.
So at the young age of 55, she now has to have a total knee.
And does she have any idea what a total knee replacement actually involves?
I don't think she does, because they're telling her now, of course, you have to, we got to optimize her for surgery. So you have to get your BMI down. You have to do all these things, keep moving and all that stuff. So I don't know if she's following through on that to optimize the surgery, but
yeah, because we've
a lot.
we have lots of friends who have more spare parts than they have original issue, more aftermarket parts. And I would have thought that a hip replacement was a terrible thing to recover from. And people go like, please, a hip is nothing compared to a knee.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian, if she has access to water, moving around is difficult like that. I've got my wife's best friend, her paralegal, has the same exact issues. And, I think water and flotation and exercise that way is about the only solution to that.
Yeah, it is. It keeps it going. Plus, you can grow back cartilage, but again, there are certain things you have to actually do. CBD is good for that, and it's been shown that, that part of the plant doesn't get you high, but it certainly has medicinal effects.
Well, and I certainly think people recognize that the vast majority of cases where a joint needs to be replaced is the result of some long-term behaviors that have put undue stress, strain, whatever, on that joint. And sooner or later, it wears out.
Yeah.
So if she doesn't modify her behaviors, how long is the bionic part going to last?
Right. That was fascinating to me, because the physician came in, the ortho surgeon came in with an injection in his front pocket. That's why I was like, why do you have an injection? He's like, oh, well, let me show you the x-ray. And when I seen it, I was like, oh, okay. He had presumed that she was in this excruciating pain.
Was that a cortisone injection for now?
Exactly. Yeah, because he had presumed that she would be in, she's in a lot of pain, which she is, but she didn't want to take an injection.
Oh, good grief. Okay, well, so again, look, the world of tension management on the one hand is very rich with things to talk about and things to explore and understand, but it's really simple when you break it down to the rules. And the rules are that definitive change only occurs two places. Where are those two places? Upgrade
and outgrade.
And outgrade changes. What's the difference between upgrade changes and outgrade changes?
Internal and external.
Internal versus external. Upgrade changes are driven by external factors. What is she waiting for to happen to her before she's actually going to change? As opposed to saying like, look, you need to look internally about your quality of life, about your personal comfort, and make those adjustments now.
Right.
Okay. And this brings to mind, as I'm thinking about this, it brings to mind the notion that there are many, many people, and this varies culturally, who just simply don't believe they have the internal control over their lives. The world is divided between those cultures that feel that life is driven by external events versus internal choices. And so you know, there could be a culture factor here. I'm not sure. There could be a whole range of things, but there is that, and it's very, very difficult to work with people from the framework that we take and from the way that we approach things. To if they do not have a sense of internal power or
Right.
control over their lives, to really help somebody like that, unless you are able to understand, okay, where is their control, sense of control overall coming from, you know, and which is tension management. And then what are the kinds of things that I need to lay out that may be, in this sense, externally driven to have her understand that, versus expecting an internal thrust for
Right.
change.
Yeah, is she suddenly going to discover within herself all of the motivations and all of the you know, values that self-care would bring along with it? Who knows? But this is what we're always up against. And at a certain point, you have to kind of help people to discover that no one has to take control away from you if you've already willingly relinquished it, you know? And so you look at her and her situation, she's almost kind of just saying like, no, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do. That's relinquishing control. And so, you know, she ends up being more susceptible to,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, but that's what I would say to you. It's kind of like manage your own tension first. Go into it with the full expectations that the pattern that you have seen over all these years is simply going to continue. Try to be of service to her as a good brother who happens to be a physician would be, and try to throw in a little bit of tension management just for the fun of it at the very least. You know, I mean, you might as well turn it into something that amuses you and just say, you know, under what circumstances, how bad does it need to get? Maybe I can arrange for that level of discomfort to happen sooner rather than later.
Right,
Raising
right.
raising the standards, AT.
Is it? It's all about upward
Exactly.
maneuvers right now. Because, you know, you would rather that she find within herself the driving force to make these changes. If that's not easy to do, and it, as Kathy pointed out, it's not really all that easy to do for a great many people, then what can you do to either help her better understand what those external factors are and the consequences that come along with waiting for those things to happen? And maybe, just maybe, sometimes you need to accelerate that process.
Yeah.
So I'll give you one little example of this. We happen to have a friend who has a hip problem. And so the hip is bothering them enough that they are complaining about it, doing a little bit of exploration around it, and but really ultimately not going beyond that. And so I thought, okay, fine then. Rather than drop this person off at the front door of wherever we're going, they're going to ride with me to the parking place. And then we're going to walk it together. So, you know what I mean? I'm not going to enable them doing something that they don't think is a problem. Okay, let's see how much of a problem it really is then. So
That's good.
yeah.
You know what triggered this exercise for me? I always get something after all of our calls, and I go, you know, to my journal and write. And I was thinking about particularly healthcare in the US, but it's really in all healthcare systems. Why don't we do more to really empower people to take greater control over their own health? Because they spend more time outside the walls of a hospital, outside the walls of a clinic than they do within. So it just makes sense for me to help them take better control over it. So I'm like, okay, well, when we looked at these characteristics of that power that we were looking at last time, I said, okay, I don't think I'm always there when it comes to helping patients in that way. And certainly not with my family. So that's what I was trying to examine on myself and say, okay, let me figure out how I can get better at doing good if that makes sense.
Right, right. And on behalf of all of your colleagues on the call, we're a little more concerned about you managing your own level of tension. You don't end up frustrated every time you talk to one of your, you said 9 siblings, is that what you have?
Yes.
Yeah, so sorry, that's way too many people, period. So, so, yeah. Okay, so let's see, Jim, Shannon, you guys have unmuted. Is there something you want to throw into the mix?
No, just
Okay, all right.
catching up on the discussion.
Yep,
Not at this point. Fascinating so far.
Okay, good. All right, so little quick subject change. Let me slide something into the window to show you guys, assuming this is slidable. Lo and behold, it is. So this question about chatting came up, and I discovered something that has probably been here all along, and I never noticed it. But if you're running a Zoom call, on the chat little screen, you can click on those 3 little dots, and it says panelists can chat with, and then you pick. And attendees can chat with whatever. Well, it defaults to no one. And so every time you start a new call, you have to set it to everyone.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that interesting? So I don't know why Zoom modified that, because
Interesting.
up to now it defaulted
Just
that
allow
anyone
you to
can
set the defaults.
Yeah, I tried to find a default setting where I could just say, just make it official. Anyone on our calls can always chat with anyone who's on our calls. I haven't found that panel. So, but here I saw
Wow.
it. And I thought like, well, maybe if I just set it once, it'll stick. Nope. Every call, you got to go to those 3 little dots and say attendees can chat with, and then you decide. But for our calls, everyone should be able to chat with everybody.
That seems to be the difference between Zoom webinar and Zoom meetings.
Because Zoom meetings as a default, everyone can chat with everyone.
Yep,
Yeah,
Yeah.
which makes sense. It's a meeting.
exactly.
Right. So yeah, anyway, I wasn't aware of that. So there you go. It's now been, so you may all chat freely. All right. So, so Brian, any other questions, comments about your
No, this is good. I always get something rich out of these conversations, so I appreciate everyone's contribution. It always leads to exercises for me, because I say I'm evidence-based, and so I experiment on myself with a lot of this stuff that we review.
Yeah,
I put myself in a confessional all the time, and it's not, enjoyable exercise all the time.
right. Well,
But
that makes it worthwhile, right?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, I don't think we learn all that much from things being perfect. So we need some little wrench to be thrown into the machinery.
Yeah.
Whatever we're doing. Okay, well then let's kind of go back to our little chat about what do different areas of the change grid actually sound like. So you can kind of better understand what all these voices are that are available to us on the change grid. Now, we talked last time around about the one in the middle. There's much more to say there, but we've spent a lot of time talking about the center of the change grid and all the good things that happen there. So I thought for today, let's leave that one for a moment and go on to the second one we would talk about. Now, ultimately, I'm going to be numbering these, this layer so we can go and look. And so I'm going to start in the middle, and that's going to be number 1. And then I thought, okay, I think I'm going to go up and to the right for number 2. And then 3 will be out grid, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then go up 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So I'm going to try to work it the way Paris kind of labels their neighborhoods, their districts. And so that's what we're trying to do. So number 2 is right here on the change grid. You see where I'm squiggling around right there? And so right here, that's going to be number 2. So to end up at this number 2 block, you have to perceive your ability as being what? Again, be Likert. We don't have these numbers. So you're just looking at really low, moderate, moderately high, high. So how would you rate your ability?
Moderate.
Moderate. And where's the challenge?
High.
Slightly
Moderate high.
Moderately high.
Moderately high,
Okay, so
yes.
just kind of put yourself into that mind space for a second. You're in a situation where you have moderate ability and moderately high challenge. And again, we said the kind of like the generic one for this is that you're thinking about some situation that you feel merits some thought. And the question that you are answering is, on a scale of very low to very high, whatever. How do you rate your ability to get this situation to turn out the way you want it to? And how challenging is it going to be to get this situation to turn out the way you want it to? So that's the big activity, getting something to turn out the way you want it to. And so you're saying like, well, my ability to that is moderate and the challenge is moderately high. Do you think that that's going to change a little bit of the narrative that goes on in your head and how you might in turn express that outwardly? Yeah.
It
Okay.
might shift some of the narrative because that's the engagement ring of intention, is it not?
Yeah. And so here we're going to go, since you brought up that one first, one of my favorite layers. Let's go ahead and do that overlay.
Ah,
To
yeah.
be in that section, where are you guys at when it comes to the engagement rings?
Intention.
Yep.
You're in intention, slightly upgrid. So remember, intention is quite the big little arc here. There is a difference between upgrid intention and downgrade intention. Would any of you like to demonstrate for us or give us a little example about what the difference between what upgrade intention might sound like versus downgrade intention might sound like?
I can give a shot at upgrade intention.
Please do.
And I don't know whether this is what you're thinking about, but upgrade intention is, gee, I'd really like to, to clean my office today. But I think I'm going to need some help.
Okay.
Because I'm not able to, move some of the furniture that I need to move to clean it.
All right. And so the voice of the upward intention is that you are expressing openly a desire to do something. And then of course you're only rating your ability moderately. And so there is this gap in ability, whatever you happen to be looking at for skill and support. So that's definitely part of it. So that's upgrade intention.
So
Yes.
downgrade would be the exact opposite. Then it's like, hey, I got it. I'll get to it. When I can. It's on the list, right? I'll get to it. But I got it.
Actually, Brian, I think it sounds more like I wish somebody else would do it.
Yeah,
really?
Definitely as we get even further down. So that you're
But you have a high
right.
ability, so you got it, no?
You could do it, but remember that the more, Brian, how good are you at cleaning a bathroom?
I'm very good at doing that.
And if we all said to you, great, then can you come by and clean our bathrooms?
Absolutely not.
Right. Ability in no way promotes likelihood of someone following through, particularly as you're shifting downgrade.
Yeah, got it.
It can wait unless company's coming over. My bathroom can wait another day. You know what I mean? So we make our little excuses. So would it be good? And that's what the downgrade intention sounds like. Yes, someday it would be good if, or one of these days I'm going to get around to doing it. Or yeah, let me put that on my list of.
Oh, I had 2 toilets replaced in my house, and I want you to know I cleaned the bathroom the day before he came.
Yeah, well, there you go. And then he made a total mess in your bathroom and you thought, maybe I could have just waited till he left.
And see, I'm cleaning every other day. I'm just that kind of person. I don't like to see dust. I don't like any of that nonsense. So I'm like,
yeah, I'm with you, Brian. I'm with you, but not about my office. I'm downgrade about my office.
Yeah, there you go. So, we all have whatever things we, hold near and dear, and other things we go, can wait. So we're upgrade on some things, relatively speaking, and we're downgrade on other things, but it's all intention. Unless you're actively doing whatever it is you're talking about needs to be done, there is no engagement. I mean, you might be mentally engaged because you're formulating an intention and might even be thinking about what sorts of things do I need to get ready. So as Kathy was talking about, she needs some help moving this or whatever. So you got to figure out, what do I need? In the world of cooking, it's called mise en place. Have you guys heard that enough watching cooking shows?
Yep.
Mise en place, you got to get everything all organized and set out and pre-measured. That's why you need a sous chef to take care of all the mise en place. So you can just get into assembly mode and make it happen fast. So it's the same thing. Mise en place happens for every activity. You got a do-it-yourself project going on. You need to do a little bit about mise en place. Those of you who don't speak French, mise en place means to put in place. And it's all about getting the right ingredients, getting the right tools, figure it all out so that you don't have to suddenly get up and head to the garage because you need something, or head off to the store because you forgot an ingredient or whatever. So mise en place is a big deal. But I think mise en place is also a form of engagement. So maybe that's it. So there's a mental act of getting things put in place, and then there's the physical act of getting things put in place as you move from intention through that transition to actual engagement.
So T, where would deliberate intention be?
Right here.
Right there.
Right along the heart line. Yeah. And that's where I think that the intention that happens along the heart line has a little bit of a different characteristic to it compared to anywhere else in the intention thing. So I want to talk a little bit about, well, what does intention sound like if you're right here at, well, forget where the lines are, but you're at 7 and 7. We'll just put you there, 7 and 7. So relatively solid ability, but you're also facing a moderate kind of level of challenge there in balance. So what might your statement of intention sound like there?
Prepared confidence.
Yep. So we were here. We're going to, I've got a solid intention. I am. All right. So
you're open.
Well,
right?
no, you're on the heart line. You're definitely in power.
So
Okay.
I would say I am planning to clean my office tomorrow.
I am planning to clean my office tomorrow. That's right. Tomorrow, I'm going to go a little bit more, and should hopefully help you feel a little more out-grid. I'm going to clean the office tomorrow. If I do nothing else, I will clean that office tomorrow. So it's a little bit more of that definitive, declarative statement of intention.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
see,
but
because
now
I've
you're
read
leaning a
some
little bit further
research
out.
about this on, there's a professor from NYU, and I'm happy to share it with anyone if you're interested. It's called Implementation Intentions. And he gives this what if scenario. So like Kathy said, I'm going to clean my office tomorrow. And then if not, then this. And it keeps people, according to his research, kind of deliberately focused on the intention and at least positioned to actually act on it. So he talks about these what if scenarios. But I've been reading a lot because I've been hearing about these implementation intentions. That's why I ask about where's deliberate intention.
Yeah, well, the deliberate, intentional sorts of behaviors occur best on the heart line. So it's obviously it's a little bit shifted outgrid because you're doing something, and we know that the outgrid energy is about taking care of stuff. And so yeah, but that's like, if we really get into it, there's a big difference between upgrid intention, downgrid intention, midgrid intention, but they're all still statements of intention. And none of that matters. None of that changes much of anything until someone actually moves from intention to engagement. So, yep. All right. So let's go back to our little spot of the day. Moderate level of ability, moderately high level of challenge. There you are on the change grid. So we have a little bit of upgrade intention, not even as strong as you could be when we get to these spots further upgrade, but there is a relatively stronger intention being stated right there. That's good. What else can you tell me?
They're thinking consistently about something.
Ooh, tell us about that. So it's on their mind.
Power. So they're in an information gathering mode, but they're a little bit upgrid. So it's got more of their attention.
More of their attention, higher level of attention commands greater levels of attention. And so they're paying closer attention to it. That's all good. Good. Let's throw up this little layer. I'll put the little grid above it. So what are they being when they're right there? They're kind of in between these four. But I see more of one energy than other energies. Let's think about that. Looking at primary energies, this spot would have two primary driver energies available to it and at the same time, 2 primary expressive energies available to it. Can you see that? Yep, all capital letters.
I would just say, just a minor comment, that they're also willing to talk about it. They express themselves about their intention in this part of it. They don't keep it to themselves.
Yep. Now, if we look at, let me find another layer here. That's not going. We talked about that one. Look at what their little slice of the pie is when we look at the 8 type overlays. Most of that square is which of these gray words?
Influencer.
Influencer. All right. So there is a little more energy around it. They are trying to influence people. Now, as Kathy's example illustrated, she might be trying to influence people to be of assistance to her as she embarks upon whatever. So there could be, this is where you start to try to maybe enlist the support of others, enlist the input of others. Yeah. Does that resonate with you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because if I'm half expressive and half leader, the leader energy is telling me to go somewhere. I want to go somewhere. And the expressive energy is telling me do it by awakening feelings. So I think influence here, this is where you can be very persuasive. Yeah. Call into all sorts of play certain things. And because we can also see
Persuasive, not preachy.
Yeah, I don't think that would be preachy. If we said, where is preachy?
Yeah, go out grid a little bit more and up.
Yeah, maybe this is a little bit preachy. Moderate ability, high perceived level of challenge. Maybe now you're going to be a little more preachy because your tension is higher, your sense of urgency is higher. So this might be a less participative style of influencing or persuasion.
Yep.
Where here, I think this is very much about engaging others, energies, etc.
So based on that position, could we say that they are perhaps seizing control?
They're in the process. We know the people that are in power stress are doing what when it comes to control? All y'all know the answer.
In power stress?
Yeah, what are we doing as far as control is concerned in power stress? So way upgrade your feeling, up in stress, you feel 3 words. What are those 3 words?
Control.
Out of control.
Out of control. When you step down to power stress, what are you doing?
Seizing control.
Seizing control. What happens in power?
You're in control.
In control.
So that little block has got a good little chunk up there where you're seizing control. But a big percentage of that block would be how about if I said you've recently attained a higher level of control, more of a sense of control. I don't know that you really feel like you're there yet. You're still in the northern half of power. So there's still stuff being figured out and put into place and all that. But I would say the person is well on their way to that. But seizing control, a little bit of it, being in control. There's still some settling that's happening here. Yeah, you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting way to read the change grid.
It is.
Yeah, you got to really go digging through the different layers so that when I show you a composite change grid and say, you guys should be able to zoom to any layer in your head anytime you want, just to see if there's something there that would better illustrate the situation for your client. So for example, Brian, it'd be very interesting to know, where is your sister on the change grid? So when it comes to taking care of her mobility issue, how does she rate her ability to do it? Be your sister.
Probably I would say maybe a 5.
Okay, so you're still in this edge of this moderate zone. And how challenging does she think it is to take?
Probably a 10.
Okay, so in theory, she should be up here solidly in power stress, seizing control. So what that tells me is that even as high as her tension is, it's still not high enough to do what?
To change, yeah.
To prompt a change. She does not find her current situation troublesome enough to bother doing anything definitive to change it. You guys do recognize I recite that verbatim every time I say it. So it's something that you kind of want to lock in to share when people go like, well, wait, you got everything you need. In fact, Down in power, she has everything she needs. You're trying to get her to make this change out grid from an empowered sort of position. And whether she's not ready for that or doesn't resonate with that or whatever, I don't know. But apparently it's not enough tension. So here's
Yeah, I
a
think it's more humane to move her a little bit more up grid than out grid.
and that becomes the whole art of tension management. Do you think you're better off when it comes to serving your sister's best intentions, best interests, for you to be the one to raise her tension to that threshold, or for you to be the one to help her re-educate her threshold to be down in power?
Yeah. Yeah, we have those conversations all the time, actually, amongst physicians, because we talk about the ethics of it is what the training was on in terms of, we see patients all the time that, they buy the equipment or they go to therapy and do minimal,
Mhm.
those kinds of things. So they're somewhat understanding that they have to make the change, but they just don't stick with it long enough to actually actualize any real
Well,
change.
exactly. And the whole ethics part of it, well, first of all, I'd be curious to know if the ethics of medicine supersede the ethics of family relationships. I dare say.
That's my thinking, because in fact, some recent research just came out and said 94% of medical intervention is just not good, and it doesn't make any change at all.
Yeah. And so maybe I admire anyone who wants to try to approach life through fully ethical kinds of behavior, but I can come up with countless examples of times where once in a while you got to stir things up. Once in a while you got to like help someone confront that situation, let them experience whatever it is. In fact, let's see, Jim's on the call. So Jim works with a lot of people who have backgrounds in substance abuse issues and things like that. So Jim, how often has the phrase been used, you have to let them hit rock bottom?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
otherwise, right. And so isn't that a form of tension management?
yeah.
So yeah,
Instead of absorbing the tension yourself somehow or pretending you
right,
can,
right.
it's letting them feel the tension.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Brian, if you leave that discussion and you're the one feeling more frustrated than she is, well, what did you just do to yourself?
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, there you go. But anyway, you got to allow people to have whatever their life experience is, and some people need to have, a little bit of a nudge, a caring little push in the right direction of what's going on. Otherwise, it's going to end up being a tough love situation.
Yeah, and I'm happy to facilitate either. I just really am.
Yeah, well, and that's the whole issue here. Now, I want to go to one other layer of the change grid, just to kind of bring the. Oh, and by the way, when it comes to the circles, that little plotting. Oh, sorry, got to bring the one with the overlay. You can see that a good section of this little section here is inside of the green circle.
Mm.
And there's a bit of it that's out there where, say, this is where life is lived. Here is where you are having conversations with your internal counsel, whatever. We haven't given a label yet to what those actual individuals are, but the voices that remain in your head that are actually your good counselors, that are, helping you to sort through out. So there's a little bit of that going on. There is this idea about being thoughtful and considerate and prudent and all that. But there's also this idea like, look, life is happening and I need to respond to this. So whatever's happening with my little internal counsel needs to either be put into a little bit of action or expanded beyond that. So can you kind of see where those lines are and what I'm talking about there? Yeah. Okay. Now, there's one other layer we could look at, and this will kind of like be the layer that I think is going to help to confirm, perhaps validate what you guys have been saying. So to do this, I just need you to remember we're looking at coordinates. Let's just say 6, 8, and 6, 9, so we know where the general vicinity is. Because I'm going to go to the adjective map, and I'm going to go through and find 6, 8, 6, 9. There we go. And I'm going to do my best to zoom in a profound way on this. 6, 8, 6, 9. Where am I at? So I know it's a lot to look at, but these are the words, this general vicinity that you want to be looking at. So cooperative, supportive, friendly, informal, popular, warm, adaptable, tactical, innovative, a little bit of time, tuned in, time sensitive, rescuing. These are some of the words that are available to us. So does that feel like a useful place for someone to be when it comes to accomplishing a particular task? What words here do you like? What words here do you think like, who knows?
I think for a leader or a manager, there's some value in being in that spot. I'm not sure about an individual contributor.
Okay, interesting.
The words adaptable and tactical seem to make more sense to me here than something like rescuing. I'm having a hard time reading. I am.
Yeah. Oh, well,
but yeah. Thank you. The cooperative and supportive maybe, and adaptable and tactical seem to be more leadership. Fall into that realm, I think, to a greater extent.
Yeah.
Than some of the other words.
Yeah, because these end up being where the analytical expressive comes into play. So that whole tactical element of that is definitely an analytical element. So yeah, so I think we're in a kind of a good general sort of spot. Again, let's go like if 6, 9 were the epicenter. 6 and 9 is the epicenter. 6, 8 and 6, 9 would be where I'd really be looking at. Let's see if I can go down a little bit further. Yeah, tuned in, time sensitive. Yeah, that feels good too. Now we're getting a bit too far away from that particular area. So I would say to you guys that I think what we've talked about and described feels rather accurate for what we know about the change grid. Thoughts about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's see if there's anything else we haven't touched on here. We talked about that. Balance, we talked about that. It's a good chunk of healthy spot, a little bit outside of it. Oh, this is interesting. You want to kind of try the Ikigai layer? Oh, I don't know if I even can. I've just gotten a terrific headache even looking at that diagram. But just going back to 6, 8 and 6, 9 as being our little epicenter, there is a feeling of mission here that's going on. So if we said, if you overlay the Ikigai diagram, is that what's called? Ikigai, whatever. Yeah, you're at an intersection between what the world needs or your world needs and what you love doing. But it's really about this is where the mission is being worked. And yeah, I can see how I might be able to make a case around that one as well. Okay. Any other things you might want to share about that particular spot on the change grid? Talked about that one. Oh, intensity. Okay, you're talking about 4th degree and 5th degree intensity. That's still a moderate level of intensity as far as whatever it is you're pursuing. All right, I think we did that one. Fair enough?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, now from there, we still got 10 minutes left. We can start another one. So from there, the skin middle is number 1. We'll call that square we just talked about 2. If I'm going to do my little trip around the change grid a la Parisian style, the next place would be this middle out grid kind of thing. I don't know what to call it otherwise, but you would say your ability would be moderately high, but the challenge is also moderately high. So, what might you tell me about that particular spot? Or really, but what we're doing is talking about voices. What does that area sound like?
That's like being at the starting gate or having the gun just gone off.
Okay, so you're getting into motion. Now we can look at that by looking at the 4 energies or the 16 energies. So you are getting closer to the middle of outgrid. In fact, the actual center of the outgrid quadrant is one of the addressable locations there.
I would say ready to act, just
Ready
ready.
to act. Yep. In
If,
fact,
if not beginning action. Yeah.
yeah, let's look at that engagement thing. The great deal of that block, you got a little bit over here of intention, but as far as the addressable locations inside of it, we've got some engagement happening there. So it might be gentle engagement leaning towards the in-grid side of things, might be a little bit more driven engagement, because remember right here, coordinates 9, 9 is the epicenter of the out-grid quadrant. So that's where everything driver, is kind of expressing itself best. Okay, so I know I'm in power. I know I'm in mid-grid engagement, so midline engagement, heartline's going right here. So if I look at the 16 energies, what energy is that? That would be, well, primarily an amiable driver energy with a little bit, touching into the other three. But I would really want to look at the tertiary energy and say this is more of a driven, amiable driver. So a little more determined to make something happen, still trying to stay engaged with other people, moving things forward. Does that bode well for the outcome? So if you said your ability to achieve whatever, deal with the situation was moderately high, but the challenge is also moderately high, what would you be saying to yourself? Am I good? Am I in trouble? What are you saying to
I
yourself?
hope this works.
I hope this works.
I can do this.
I
Oh,
can.
yeah,
do
yeah.
it.
I don't think it's I hope. I think it's
I think hope needs a little more upward.
yeah, yeah. It's I'm ready to do this.
Yep. In fact, I'm not only ready to do this, I'm actively doing it.
Mhm.
Right? I'm engaged. I'm actively doing it.
But
So
if they're amiable, are they they're doing it, but they're a team player?
well,
Would you say?
yeah, but remember their primary energy where they are. I really have
Is
to
driven.
figure out these layers better. They're primarily a driver energy for
I got
sure.
it.
They are leaning somewhat, but remember 9, 9 right there where you see my little pointer there. That's a totally balanced driver.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, there's a bit of a lean towards the amiable side of things, but it wouldn't be too hard for me to build the case that this is also a balanced driver. What's a balanced driver's skill that the other types of drivers are going to lose a little bit? A balanced driver has an ability to do something that these less balanced drivers start to lose the ability to do. Anybody?
Hmm.
It's about flexing to become whatever the situation requires. So,
Ah,
I have available to me at that spot all 4 secondary energies,
interesting.
right? And I have them available to me in balance. So
Mm.
here I don't want to use the word resilient because resilience, I've always felt that resilience is a response to something.
Mhm.
I love when people can say like, I'm a resilient person. I promise you that's circumstantial. So I'm glad you think of yourself as being resilient. I imagine that means you have a long history of finding your way.
It's much more about flexible. I'm flexible in my ability to do this and in my readiness to do this.
In fact, that's the word I was looking for. Can we find flexibility? To be that's what this person is. They're ready to it's not even morphing. It's really just a little bit to pull into play a little bit of a secondary energy just to help them depending on where they're at. So if anything, I think that's probably the best place to be on the change grid. As far as driver energy goes. Yes, it's not as far out grid as driven driver. If I look at the engagement rings, it is true that, where is it at? That they're not into this full-blown execution mode. You'd have to be at 10-10 to be into execution. That 9-9 is right on the edge between full engagement and killing it, that execution sort of thing. So I think this is a great place to be accomplishing things without running the risk of being too far out grid, too far, upgrade, et cetera. So I think
So that
that's the sweet.
next stage in terms of moving like that 10-10, that's the, you're susceptible to the burnout and that kind of thing there, yes?
Right. Yeah. Well, when we'll do a deep dive there, but we're there. We always pay attention to tension. Once I'm at 10-10, now my thoughts are that my ability is high. I get it. Out of high would be 10, 11, or 12, but that's why we certainly prefer a more nuanced scale than a little 5-point Likert scale. But for the sake of simplicity, these three ratings, 10, 11, or 12, would all fall in the category of a high perceived ability. And you are looking at a high perceived challenge. Part of me still feels like I have to help the person make a distinction between 10, 10, 11, 11, and 12, 12. Nevertheless, when it comes to this 5x5 array, those would all fall here. So yeah. So if they are leaning amiable, they're in a good spot. That would be 10, 10. But if they start to lean driver, now you're talking about 11, 11, a driven driver.
Okay, because I hear this a lot from I say I advise some of these digital health companies, and I hear the entrepreneurs when they, report in the meeting, they're killing it.
Yep.
The challenge has been high, and they feel they, done enough customer development and all these kinds of things to where they can now hone their capacity to service the target demographic. So their expression literally is, "I'm killing it."
Yep. Yep. And that's why we use the word execute. Execute is a lot of interesting definitions. If you bother looking it up, you go like, some of them are very positive. I'm getting stuff done. But I could also be damaging relationships, damaging opportunities, et cetera. So there is a little bit of killing something, or at the very least, taking it to the brink of death's door. In fact, little side note, have you guys who subscribe to, I think it's Hulu, have you seen that one of the latest Hulu releases is a movie called The Princess? Has anybody seen that?
No.
Okay, well, here it is in a nutshell. So it's a Hulu original movie. It's called The Princess, and it's basically a very simple story. The royal family has no male heir, and so they need to marry off their daughter to somebody who happens to be evil, of course, who can then run the kingdom, but blah, 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 blah. So this whole thing is, meanwhile, this gal, the princess, wants nothing to do with this schmo and sees right through his nonsense. Well, unbeknownst to him, she has been trained from being a very young girl to be an expert warrior, to be an amazing marks person, or whatever the sword equivalent of that is, swords person, or whatever. So she knows her stuff. And so it is a nonstop fight scene from the beginning of the movie until the end of the movie. An hour and 28 minutes of nonstop fight scenes. And it's not particularly well staged. It's not particularly well acted, or because there's not much to act around it. But I bring it up just to say, this gal is a driven driver. No one is going to get in her way. We lost count of the number of people she killed. And by the way, as I'm saying all this, I want you to think that the movie is really a comedy. So it's not like this Game of Thrones kind of thing where the scenes are too vivid or whatever. No, someone's just been killed, but the physics are totally off. I mean, she'll stab somebody, they'll do a flip midair. It's like nobody's going to stab anyone and result in a flip midair. That's not the way physics works. And so anyway, it is entertaining to watch. After the first, I don't know, quarter of the movie, you go, well, it's really a bad movie, but I'm invested enough right now, and I'm impressed by the fight scene, so I'm just going to keep watching it. So it's one of those. So yeah, so I don't know that I would say it's worth watching, but if you are going to watch it, know that gal who's the princess, she's performing 90% of the stunts herself. So it's a pretty impressive thing as far as the actor kind of goes. But anyway, I bring that all up to say she's killing it. She's literally killing anybody and everybody all around her, and all that, because she's on her quest. She's on her whatever. And at the end of it, I hate
It's
to
also
blow
about
up.
saving her family too.
It's very much about saving her family because evil guy, of course, wants them out of the way now so that he can seize power immediately instead of waiting for dad to die or her dad to die. So, but it is very absurd and all that sort of a thing. But yeah, it's an interesting watch. And at the end of it, of course, I hate to blow the end of the story for you guys, but I promise you I'm blowing nothing. He decides to finally decree that in all cases forward, that a princess can also become the reigning monarch. So yeah. There's a
So
lot
she's
of-
killing
I
it
just
for
I
a
just have to
purpose.
make a social commentary here that
Yeah.
I've been noticing in all of these movies that I've been watching a lot of action films recently, more so than I normally do, featuring young girls that are getting younger and younger and younger, the ones who are just kicking ass. I mean,
Yep.
just
Literally.
nonstop. And they're getting younger, and they're getting like 10, and I'm waiting for the 3-year-olds to come out, I mean, it is unbelievable. I mean, I think of how far I have come in my, in my lifetime of fighting for women's rights. And it's like all of a sudden our youngsters, our young girls are out there as warriors everywhere you look.
And of course, the media tends to want to reflect that. Obviously, everyone's trying to make money, so they want to make sure they're doing the popular thing. Had a friend years and years and years ago, Dr. Fred Fegis. He's got his PhD in mass communications. And his actual dissertation was on the subject was how the federal government used the media to shape American attitudes towards people of Latin descent. And so he was the one who was basically studying when Ricardo Montalban came on the scene, who was the gal with the fruit on her head?
Rita Moreno.
Yeah, Rita
No,
Moreno.
No.
Cheetah Rivera.
Right.
Yes.
Rivera. So the government was making an active attempt to try to position in the mind of American viewers that people from the Latin countries were very sophisticated, were very, handsome and debonair and beautiful, but, very, so they were doing that. But his whole dissertation was about how the media ends up either introducing or fortifying our perceptions of larger groups of people. So
Sounds like an anthropologist to me.
well, yeah, I mean, yeah. But his big deal was studying only the mass communication side of things, how it was all done. But yeah, okay, anywho, that's where we're at. So are you guys finding this a good review of these layers, as well as a good exercise in reading through the layers?
Mhm.
Very helpful. Thank you.
All right, well, we'll continue our little trip. Kind of know the next time around, we're going to probably start with what we'll call section 4. Section 4 would be this guy right here. Moderately high ability, moderate challenge. How's that language going to change? So we'll pick up where we left off next time around. So you guys have a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.